Hey everyone, Money with Yumi here, where I talk about anything and everything related to money, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is real estate in Singapore. Now, for those of you who don't know, Singapore is a city-state, which means that our land is limited, making property prices the second highest in the world after Hong Kong. In this video, I want to try to go a little bit more in-depth about real estate in Singapore, so please bear with me. Real estate in Singapore is separated into two main categories: public housing and private housing. Roughly 80% of the total Singapore population, which is roughly 6 million people, live in public housing called HDB flats, the acronym for Housing and Development Board, and they look like this. And the other 20% live in private housing, which could mean a condominium or a landed house like clustered homes, terraces, semi-detached, and bungalows. Home ownership in Singapore is one of the highest in the world, with over 90% owning the home that they live in. And that's why there's a saying that Singaporeans are asset rich but cash poor. In real estate, there are two types of ownership interests: freehold and leasehold. If a property is freehold, you can own it for an indefinite period, which could literally mean infinity or forever. But with leasehold, you can only lease the property for a fixed number of years. And in Singapore, we have freehold and two types of leasehold, which is 99 years and 999 years. All public housing HDBs have a leasehold of 99 years, and they're kind of like a subsidized housing by the Singapore government to provide affordable housing to the majority of its citizens. It's developed and maintained by the Singapore government, and these high-rise HDB flats are scattered across the country. HDBs are great, especially as a starter home, because they are located in self-sufficient housing estates where blocks of HDBs are surrounded by amenities like supermarkets, malls, clinics, schools, hawker centers, coffee shops, and usually comes with an amazing public transport network. And it is also usually walking distance to bus stops or MRT and subway stations. Personally, what I like best about HDBs is that the Singapore government established ethnic quotas for HDB neighborhoods and blocks to ensure a better racial mix. That way you don't get too many people of the same race in a neighborhood or block, and you ensure integration of the various races to promote racial harmony, understanding, and tolerance. And this only applies to public housing and not private housing. I have seen public housing around the world, and Singapore probably has one of the best public housing I've ever seen. The upkeep of the HDBs, like how they were maintained and upgraded over the years, is just impeccable. Like when some of the older HDB estates did not have an elevator, or only an elevator for alternate floors like 1, 3, 5, 7, and they install an elevator for every single floor. And according to HDB, throughout the entire 99 years lease, there will be two major improvements. This is why I'm not surprised that in 2020 there were 72 HDB flats that were sold for more than 1 million Singapore dollars. That's 750,000 US dollars for public housing. It's crazy, right? Tell that to any foreigners, it's just gonna blow their pants up. Well, oh, our car prices as well. And you should see their reaction every time I tell them that in Singapore you don't propose to your girlfriend with a ring, but instead you propose with a BTO. So BTO stands for built to order. And like the name suggests, this is usually because you have to wait 3 to 4 years for your new BTO flat to finish construction. This BTO is an initiative by the Singapore government to provide subsidized housing, promote home ownership, and encourage young couples to get married and then have babies so the Singapore population will grow. There are also several housing grants given to new couples that will help make the purchase slightly cheaper. And in order to qualify for a BTO, you'll have to check your eligibility. And this usually means that you'll have to be a Singaporean citizen, or your future spouse has to be one. And you'll have to apply together with your fiancé. And both of your combined salary has to be below the income ceiling of 7,000 to 14,000 Singapore dollars a month, depending on the size of the flat that you're applying for. You'll have to check regularly for upcoming new BTO launches, and once you have decided on an area that interests you, you'll have to submit a ballot and wait for about a month to know whether you're successful or not. After which you'll get your HDB loan eligibility letter, which certifies that you're eligible for a HDB loan. And once your ballot is successful, you'll be invited to choose what kind of flat you want, like a 3, 4, or 5-room flat. If you thought striking the lottery is hard, I have heard stories from my friends that the ballots for BTO is a lot harder and really competitive, especially if the BTO is located in a more desirable neighborhood. And BTO is where you can make easy money in real estate in Singapore. If you qualify, just get a BTO, live in it, and then sell it after 5 years. Shh, don't tell anybody I told you that. And if you're single and want a BTO, you'll have to wait until you're 35 years old because single people are not accepted in Singapore. We want babies. We want babies. We want babies. I'm just kidding, so don't get triggered. And once you get your BTO, you'll have to live in it for a minimum of 5 years before you can rent it or sell it. And if you don't want to wait 3 to 4 years to move into a new flat because you're super kanchang and want to get married, or your income surpasses the ceiling, then buying a resale HDB flat on the open market would be the better option. There's also Executive Condominiums, which is a hybrid between public housing and private housing. To qualify for an EC, your combined monthly household income is capped at $16,000 a month. And if you're a foreigner, you can't buy HDBs, but you can buy ECs, but only 10 years from the development's completion date, right? So for example, if the EC is a new development in 2021, you as a foreigner can only buy it in 2031. And like HDBs, if you buy ECs, you have to live in it for a minimum of 5 years before you can sell it to other Singaporeans or PRs. Okay, moving on is private housing. Only 20% of the entire Singapore population live in private housing, and that includes like condominiums, apartments, and landed homes like clustered homes, terraces, detached house, and bungalows. Only the top 5% in Singapore can afford a landed property, and most of them make about 5 to 6 figures a month for their income. And some of the most expensive properties in Singapore are classified as good class bungalows, which are extremely rare, and we'll talk more about numbers later on. So earlier I said that all HDBs come with 99-year leasehold, and private housing has 3 types of leasehold: 99 years, 999 years, and freehold. With 99 years and 999 years, when the lease is up, it goes back to the owner of the land, which is probably the developer or the Singapore government, since they own most of the land in Singapore. But with freehold, it's yours to keep forever, right? And this is the highest interest that anyone can get, and that is why private properties tend to have a premium price on them, right? But getting properties freehold is probably what you'll want to get. Private housing does not have any subsidies from the Singapore government, so as long as you can afford it, you can buy it. If you buy a new development, you can oftentimes get an early bird discount from the developer, which is at about like 10% or so, and you can negotiate this with the developer, right? And if the new development has different phases like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, or phase 4, getting it in the early phases like phase 1 would probably be the cheapest, and it gets more expensive as the entire development completes. So while purchasing new developments used to be one of the easier methods to make money in real estate in Singapore, there are some risks associated with it, because the price that the developers are selling at might have already factored in a premium pricing, and you're not getting a deal for what you're paying for, especially when you do your comps, your comparative analysis with other similar properties in that area. What I've noticed when I studied the Singapore real estate market for the past 5 years is that many people who purchased new developments ended up selling it at a loss. Like if they bought it for $1 million and they sold it for $980,000. And even if they sold it for $1 million, it's still a loss. A lot of people do not know the right way to calculate profitability. And I might make a video about this in the future, so if you're interested, please let me know in the comments below. Alright, now it's time to talk some numbers because this is a money channel and this video would not be complete without it. How much you have to pay for real estate in Singapore are determined by 3 main factors, whether it is public housing or private housing, the tenure, which is freehold or leasehold, and of course, location, location, and location. There are 28 districts in Singapore with 3 main subdivisions: Core Central Region, Rest of Central Region, and Outside Central Region. And typically, properties in the Core Central Region would have a higher pricing compared to buying one in the Outside Central Region. What about the average prices of homes in Singapore? The average cost of a 4-room BTO is about $300,000 to $400,000. The average cost of a resale HDB in Singapore for a 4-room flat is about $500,000, and ECs are priced at about $700,000. The average price for a terrace house is $3.1 million, roughly $4.5 million for a corner terrace. The average price for a semi-detached is close to $5 million. And the average price for a detached house, also known as bungalows, is at about $10 million. And if you're talking about good class bungalows, you'll have to fork out at least $23 million. The most expensive good class bungalow to date was sold at a whopping $231 million. Look at this. How much do you think this is worth? It's located in the Central Core region and it sits on a massive land. It's probably worth more than 500 million Singapore dollars now. What about down payment? Down payment for HDB depends on whether you're getting a loan directly from HDB or a private bank loan. If you choose to loan from HDB, you'll have to pay roughly 10% for down payment, and for private bank loans, you'll need to put at least 25% down. And the interest rates at private banks will be lower than HDB because you're putting more money down. For private housing, if you're not paying in 100% cash, you can only take a home mortgage loan from private banks and you'll have to make a minimum down payment of 25%, 5% of which has to be cash and the other 20% can be cash or from your CPF ordinary account if you have money in it and wish to use it. And before you think that's it, nope, I'm not done. There are some fees associated with real estate that you have to pay, and this is called closing costs or conveyance fees. And you have to pay for the services of a conveyancing lawyer to execute the legal process, and for private property transactions, this could be between $2,000 to $3,000. If you're buying a new BTO flat, you can use the HDB legal fee calculator to calculate how much fees you'll have to pay. It's not too bad compared to what you'll have to pay for private housing. If you're a Singaporean buying a private property, for your first property, you'll have to pay a legal service fee called stamp duty, which is about 1 to 3% of the property price if it is below $1 million. And if the property is above $1 million, you'll have to pay 4% on the remaining amount exceeding $1 million of the property price. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're buying a property that costs $1.5 million, and this is what you're going to be paying in stamp duty. So the first $180,000 would be taxed at 1%, the next $180,000 would be taxed at 2%, the next $640,000 would be at 3%, and the remaining $500,000 would be taxed at 4%, bringing that to a total of $44,600. So in addition to that 25% deposit you have to make for private housing, you have to pay another $44,600 in closing costs. And depending on your residency status, a Singaporean citizen, a PR, or a foreigner, and how many residential properties you already own in Singapore, you might have to pay an additional buyer's stamp duty, also known as ABSD. If you're a Singaporean buying your second property, which means you now own 2 homes, you'll have to pay an additional 12% ABSD on top of that regular stamp duty and 15% for your third and subsequent property. So in my example earlier, 12% of 1.5 million is $180,000 and 15% of 1.5 million is $225,000. Stamp duty fees are non-refundable and they have to be paid in full in cash. So for a $1.5 million property in Singapore, you'll have to fork out $419,600 if it is your first property, almost $600,000 if it is your second, and $645,000 if it is your third and subsequent property. If you're not a citizen but you're a Singapore permanent resident or PR, you have to pay an additional 5% if you're buying your first property in Singapore and an additional 15% if you're buying your second and subsequent property. So in the example given earlier, if you're buying your first condominium at $1.5 million as a PR, your stamp duty and ABSD fees will be $44,600 plus $75,000, which will equal to $119,600. Plus the $375,000 down payment, you're looking at a total cost of $494,600. If you're a foreigner, you can't purchase HDBs, but you can purchase both leasehold and freehold private condos. You just have to pay an additional buyer's stamp duty, ABSD, of, wait for it, 20%. It doesn't matter if it's your first, fourth, or 10th property, you just have to pay that 20% each and every time. So if you're a foreigner purchasing your first home, you're looking at $44,600 plus $300,000, which is equals to $344,600 in stamp duties, and with the 25% down payment, you have to fork out about $720,000 in total for a $1.5 million home. Can you imagine if the foreigner bought it in cash, he or she would have to pay a total of $1,844,000 for a $1.5 million condo. And the total cost you have to fork out gets ridiculously high as the home prices get higher. And the reason why stamp duties are so high for foreigners is to deter foreign investors from buying too much real estate in Singapore and not having enough inventory for Singaporeans, which would then drive prices up even more and make housing less affordable. And foreigners like our billionaire friend James Dyson, inventor of the Dyson brands, bought a bungalow in Singapore. You just have to get special consent from the Singapore Land Authority to do so. And usually such permission is only granted where they can prove that they have made adequate economic contribution to Singapore. Let's take a quick look at how much you should make to afford to buy a property in Singapore. And if you're a single person, you can multiply the income by 2. And feel free to pause this part of the video so you can look at the numbers. So if you're buying a condominium in the Central Core region as a single person, you should be making at least $20,000 in order to afford it. And there you have it, guys. A somewhat detailed dive into owning real estate in Singapore. And I've always been interested in real estate ever since I was a kid because of my parents. So I have been monitoring the real estate market in Singapore for quite some time now and will continue doing so. And I still strongly believe till this very day that owning investment properties is one of the best ways, if not the best way, to grow your wealth. And I'm not talking about buying a home where you're going to be living in, because to me as a real estate investor, if a property is not cash flowing, it is a liability. And I know some of you might disagree with this statement, and we can agree to disagree. And why do I think it's one of the best wealth generators out there? Real estate allows you to take advantage of leverage, and you're essentially having someone else pay your debt for you, which is the definition of good debt. And while you're paying off that debt, you could also be generating some cash flow, and 30 years after your loan is paid off, you'll be generating 100% passive income, even while you sleep. And this is how you can retire comfortably. So guys, be frugal when you're young, save up money, invest the money into the stock market, and then use the profits later on to buy your first rental. Or even better, find ways to make more money. Don't forget to smash the thumbs up button, subscribe to my channel, and ring the bell icon so you get notified whenever I post a new video. It'll help out with the channel in a huge way, and feel free to follow me on my Instagram. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you again next time.